Shields up, Iron Breakers. Paragon here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Paragon. Now, as you guys might be aware, I recently released 3 videos of Paragon gameplay. 2 of those are at the Squadron destination right now, and another one is at my personal channel. Each of these videos is essentially me going over a match with different heroes so that you guys get experience from a tank perspective, from a support perspective, as well as a DPS perspective. And the ones over on the Squadron side of things also have Hengist co-commentating with me throughout those matches. So there's going to be links to those in the comment section just in case you guys are curious. If you haven't watched that Paragon footage yet and you are curious about Paragon, you might want to check those out. So what is the purpose of today's video? So after I released those videos, I let them sit there for a while and to see what people were commenting on them. And a week after or so, I went and I checked the comment sections for each of those videos, and I went and extrapolated some of the feedback that I saw there from people, like their concerns, some questions, and a couple of misconceptions that I believe people get from watching those early matches. And what I did was I compiled most of those, or at least the ones that I thought were relevant, so that I could give you guys my personal input on each of these, because there seemed to be, in my opinion, a lot of misconceptions about Paragon. And I kind of feel that I have a lot of experience in Paragon at this point. I mean, clearly I'm not the most competitive Paragon player out there. I mean, we can only really play Paragon at the weekends, and recently it's only been on Saturday. Come on, guys, I need to make those tests longer. But yeah, I kind of feel like I have enough experience where I can tell you guys about a lot of the things that I've seen that I just think are a little bit wrong in regards to what people are assuming about Paragon. So let's get started. The first thing that a lot of people have asked, because I believe that there's probably a lot of people that are in the alpha test right now, and when they saw gameplay footage going up, they're like, oh, you guys are breaking the NDA, and like, what is happening? Has the NDA been lifted? What's the deal? And what's happened is the people who attended the community event over at Epic headquarters, we got to record matches there with a specific build that they had there. So the matches that you guys have seen on the videos that I have uploaded, these are not from the builds of the online tests. This was a special build that they had over at the community event that they held, which you guys can know more about that community event if you're curious. There's also a video about that on my channel. And one of the main differences is obviously going to be, if you look at that footage, you will notice that the watermark is not there. So footage of the game that does not have a watermark, if you guys see that kind of footage, probably means that person was at the event as well, and they recorded that match at the event, because the NDA on the online test still has not been lifted. I mean, today is the 24th of February, and at this date, it has not been lifted. Now, I know that some of you guys are probably concerned at this point and like, oh, so why are these people getting to, upload footage? Why can't I upload footage? And the only thing I can really tell you there is, from the conversations that I've had with developers, I kind of get a feeling that it shouldn't take them too long to just allow you guys that are currently in the online tests to upload your own footage, because the vibe that I got from them is that they don't want to create an environment where there's privileged YouTubers and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure that those of you that want to create content for Paragon, the NDA lifting on the stuff that you guys are playing shouldn't be too far off. That's again, this is just an assumption of mine from the vibe that I got from the devs. I could be wrong. I don't know. But this is just to kind of address that whole thing about, you're breaking the NDA. And it's like, no, I'm not breaking an NDA. As a matter of fact, I actually signed a physical NDA before I was allowed inside Epic headquarters. So my NDA is probably a lot more detailed than the NDA that you guys have on the online tests and stuff like that. So just to update you guys on that little thing. So now let's get to some of the more pressing questions I feel in the comments. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot is people claiming that essentially Paragon is all graphics and it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. And to be honest, while the graphics in Paragon do look impressive, which shouldn't really surprise you considering that these are the same people who are working on the Unreal Engine, so they have access to all the latest tech in the Unreal Engine, and they probably have the best knowledge of how to work with the Unreal Engine, and let's not forget that this is also the team that is behind Gears of War, Unreal Tournament, so on and so forth, so the graphics do look impressive. But this game is not just about the graphics. As a matter of fact, you guys know me. At least I hope that you know me, those of you that subscribe to me on my channel and whatnot. And you know that I'm not just about graphics. As a matter of fact, even earlier today, I live streamed a 3DS game which consisted mostly of like 8-bit sprites. And yes, the art style is amazing, but the graphics, you can't really tell me that those graphics were the best thing you've ever seen in your life. So, as you guys know, personally, I favor gameplay above all, and if I'm still interested in this game at this point, you can be damn sure that the gameplay is solid. However, having said that, the graphics, art style, and animations, in my personal opinion, also look really good. Now, there's a couple of animations on the minions currently that they still seem like they're not fully flashed out. The minions just kind of have like 2 or 3 animations, and sometimes they hover a little bit and whatnot, so the minions aren't fully flashed out yet. This is an alpha product, so I kind of feel that that's expected. But the characters themselves, I feel like they look pretty solid. There's a couple of kinks here and there, but they are improving it every single online test. Like, every online test, I notice, differences. Like, the last online test, there was a special animation for Howitzer, which was the rat getting inside the thing. His little mechanized tank and whatnot, and they're just constantly adding that stuff in. And the other thing that I can say is that I can understand why people say that the game is all graphics and no innovation, but in my opinion, the gameplay does feel not only solid but also unique. The thing is, you kind of have to play the game for yourself to see it, because just seeing it is not enough. Like, the first time I saw gameplay footage, I was also like, yeah, it's a little bit underwhelming. But once you actually start playing it, it's very, very different. I mean, just to name a couple of things, I'm looking through a list here, by the way, because I made a list of all these things just to make sure that I would be able to express myself in the best manner possible. But just to give you guys a couple of things here that I feel are unique to Paragon, you have the shooter-style aiming, and I know that some of you guys are going to say, you have that in Smite, and you really don't. I'm sorry. Smite, you aim, like, off to the sides. You don't really aim up or down. There's no real verticality to Smite, and we will get further into that when we address another comment, but that's what I wanted to bring out when I talk about shooter-style aiming. Also, you don't have shooter-style aiming in League of Legends, Dota 2, or Heroes of the Storm. None of those games has shooter-style aiming, and the reason why it's important to mention this is because this is a third-person MOBA. It is not a third-person action game. So if you're trying to compare this to, say, a game like Gigantic, which I've seen a lot of people do as well, like, Gigantic is a very different beast. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that Gigantic is considered a MOBA. I mean, it definitely doesn't have a lot of the typical MOBA elements to it. So, yeah, again, shooter-style aiming, very important point there. Then you also have the travel system, which is quite unique. As far as I'm aware, League of Legends does not have a travel system. Neither does Dota 2. Dota 2 has, like, their courier system or whatever, but I don't think it has a travel system. I didn't play too much of Dota 2. You guys are aware of this. Heroes of the Storm has their mount system, which functions kind of similar to the travel system, but the travel system has its own in-depth mechanics, which is if you get shot while you're in travel mode, you become rooted, which is a lot more punishing than just losing your mount. Trust me on that. I've seen quite a few people die from simply getting shot while on travel mode. Then there's the Prime Helix buff, which is essentially an objective specific to the map that is currently available on Paragon, and it is, again, something that you don't see in other games. Some people will probably say, oh, it's just like the Baron buff. It's really not, unless after you pick up the Baron buff, you get marked for having the Baron buff on the map, and you actually have to take the orb that you get from the Baron to a specific location on the map in order to get a buff that is for your whole team. Trust me, the Prime Helix buff, very different from Baron, in my opinion. Then on top of that, you also have deck building, which is, again, something that I don't think you have in Dota, League of Legends. You definitely don't have it in Heroes of the Storm. But deck building allows you to custom build a deck with cards that you earn as you play through the game, which pretty much works kind of like a loadout. And I know that some people are going to compare this to the runes that you have in League of Legends, but trust me, it is very, different. And again, it's one of those features that I could talk hours about with you guys, but I don't want to because I have other points that I need to bring up. Just trust me, it is different. And once you play the game, you'll understand why it's different. Then you also have the harvester mechanics, which are these little objectives that you capture that are inside your jungle and at the very edges of the map and stuff like that. And capturing these objectives grants you a point where you can collect experience for your entire team, which is, again, a different mechanic on top of all the other mechanics this map already has. Then you have the fact that this game actually has a Z-axis, which kind of goes into what I've mentioned about the shooter style aiming, and we will go further deep into that when we talk about Smite. And in my opinion, all these things, when you put all of them together, Paragon is actually doing quite a lot of things that no other MOBA is doing right now. And you guys, I've seen a lot of comments saying that it's just another MOBA, it's whatever it's like. But all of these things that I've been talking about here are quite unique to Paragon. I mean, feel free to disagree with me. Let's have a discussion in the comment sections, so long as we can all keep it civil, because I really don't feel like having to ban people. And I've seen quite a lot of negativity because, I mean, it's the internet. Nowadays, it's just cool to hate on just about everything. And it's really frustrating for someone like me who is looking forward to something and just seeing people take a dump all over it. Anyway, continuing onwards. Another comment that people have said, which is kind of also related to what I mentioned up top, it's just like League of Legends or Dota 2 or Heroes of the Storm with a different perspective. And it's really not, because for starters, we have, again, the addition of the Z-axis. On top of that, Dota 2 has the denials. This game does not have denials of any kind. And while there is last hitting in this game, which is something that you guys know that I'm not a fan of. I am not a fan of last hitting. And even in Paragon, I'm not a huge fan of Paragon having last hitting, because I simply don't like last hitting of any kind. However, the way that it is implemented in Paragon, it is not the end-all, be-all that we see in League of Legends or Dota. Like, I don't think I've been in a match where I've seen, you know, like an 80 carry type of character just like, oh man, I got to focus on my farm, I got to get my creep score up, because the fact that you're in a different perspective, it's harder for you to actually get shots off and like to get that precision last hit, so people just don't pay as much attention to it. And on top of that, last hitting, while it gives you a little bit more of experience, you don't really want to be, you know, just letting the mobs wail on each other like you do in League of Legends and then just taking the last hit. You don't want to be doing that, because if the minions actually get to your tower, they will deal significant amounts of damage. Like, minions are actually important in this game. They are a meaningful threat to your structures. And once you get down to the super minions, it gets completely insane. Like, super minions in Paragon, they will wreck your shit. It is that simple. And another thing that also comes into play when it comes to at least League of Legends and Dota 2, because naturally Heroes of the Storm does not have an item shop, but the card system that Paragon uses is actually a lot simpler and more intuitive than the item shop / runes loadout that you get for your characters. And at the same time, the card system that you have present in Paragon actually allows you for a much deeper customization and different ways for you to play different characters. And also, instead of you actually having to browse an item shop that has items for all of your characters, the fact that you work on your loadout before you actually go into the game, it basically means that all of the cards that you see when you go to the shop, these are cards that you know what each of these cards does, because you are the one building the deck. You know the stuff that it's there. You know the upgrades that you have for your cards, which is very different than, say, oh, I feel like playing this random hero in League of Legends. I guess I better just go to website A, B, or Z and copy paste this exact build with these exact items by, you know, you guys know what I'm saying. I mean, eventually I feel like we might reach a point where Paragon's going to get to that level of meta. Currently, we're not there yet, which is, to me, the most exciting time to play the game, to be honest. But I think that even as we get to that meta, I think that the way the card system works, it's a lot more intuitive for newer players than, say, when you go into Dota 2 and you're just, like, completely overwhelmed. Say, if you never played Dota 2 before, you go into the Dota 2 shop and you're just like, what is happening, you know? And what is this courier thing? And what the hell is going on? At least that's personally how I felt. Then we have other comments that basically say it's Smite. And this is the comment that really irks me, because people who say that Paragon is just Smite, they really just don't get it. I mean, you understand that essentially what you've mentioned in the previous comment that I've addressed, which is it's just like League of Legends / Dota 2 / Heroes of the Storm with a different perspective, that actually applies to Smite. Because Smite does not have a Z-axis, which the Z-axis, for those of you who don't know, I mean, it's when you're looking at a graphic from 3 dimensions. There's the 2 dimensions, which is like the X and the Y, and then there's the 3rd dimension, which is the Z. Now, Z stands for up and down when it comes to a 3D environment. And the fact of the matter is that Smite just doesn't have one. It doesn't have an up and down. When you're aiming in Smite, you're aiming just off to the sides. You're never really aiming up. If a character happens to jump up, you can't really shoot it if you have another character, right? You can't shoot it, you can't hit it with skills because it's up in the air. At least that's been my experience with Smite so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, just bear in mind, these are a lot of games that we're comparing here, and I've played all of them, but I haven't played them all, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of hours. Smite, I've probably given, I don't know, 20 hours or so to Smite, maybe 30, something along those lines. That's how much time I have in Smite. And at the time that I played it, it definitely had no Z-axis, and it was actually something that was very frustrating for me because it just felt kind of weird. And on top of having no Z-axis, Smite also doesn't actually have any verticality to it. So like basically if you look at Smite from an upwards perspective, like it's just flat. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing by any means. I'm not criticizing Smite. Smite is doing whatever it's doing. It's its own thing. What I'm saying is that Smite effectively has no verticality. So it's not like you're jumping on top of platforms and those platforms actually matter in terms of other people hitting you or not. And that is something that is clearly present in Paragon. There's a lot of verticality to the map itself, and being on a higher axis or on a higher Z point or on the lower Z point is going to greatly influence how your skills hit, how your auto attacks hit, and pretty much everything else. Okay, it's like you add a platforming element to a MOBA, which again, we haven't really seen before in a 3D environment. And another thing about Smite is that personally I'm not a huge fan of their art direction. And again, this is going to be a personal taste kind of thing. These last 2 things that I have to tell about Smite, I prefer the art direction as well as the graphics and the visuals, the animation on Paragon. But again, this is a personal thing. So you might prefer the ones in Smite. That's perfectly fine. They are, however, extremely different. The art style alone, are you kidding me? Completely different. And in my opinion, I prefer the gameplay of Paragon because, again, these are 2 very different games. Trust me, like you play Smite, you play Paragon, 2 extremely different games. So whenever people say that Paragon is essentially Smite with better graphics, it's like, it's not. And I feel that the only way people will understand this is when they will actually play the game, because people just judge things way too fast nowadays. Okay, now another one that was an extremely big point is the movement / pacing of the game is too slow. And I know this particular comment all too well because if Epic Games was to look at my feedback, because they give you a feedback form for every online test, for the very first online test, my feedback was like, this game is way too sluggish, way too slow. The pacing is terrible. Everything needs to be a lot faster. And they've actually increased the pacing of the game since that particular online test. However, what I can tell you is that even though they've increased, I don't know, I think at this point it's like 20% faster than what it was from the first time I've played it. And what I can tell you is that at this particular point in time, the game is deceptively fast. Because even though when you're not in travel form, your character kind of feels like it takes him forever to move in the map, what happens is once you get into that travel form, your character moves way too fast. And you guys are like, what are you talking about? We've seen the gameplay footage. The characters don't move that fast at all. The problem here is a lot of the gameplay footage that is being put out there right now for Paragon is from a beginner's perspective. So I've been in a match where I was facing an enemy team, which I suspect were probably a bunch of devs. This was during an online test, not during the event that I was at. I suspect that the enemy team was probably a bunch of developers because they were moving through the map so fast that you couldn't even figure out when they were coming to gank you. Because that's the thing, the key to the pacing of Paragon is mastering the movement system. So if you're constantly shifting in and out of the fast move, which is like their running animation, whatever, if you're constantly shifting in and out of that to move in between lanes, the pacing just goes insane. Like, I've seen people pushing the right lane, and suddenly I'm distracted because I'm focusing on my own in the middle lane, and then suddenly out of nowhere they're ganking me from left and right at the same time. And how fast they got there is insane because they know the jungle paths, because there is no actual map of the jungle in your mini-map. So you need to know which of the jungle paths leads you to where you want to go. So once people have mastered those paths, trust me, the pacing of the game right now, I feel might actually be too fast, which is surprising. Now, the other thing that is important about this point of the movement / pacing of the game being too slow is that I feel a lot of people were expecting Paragon to be more of a third-person action shooter type of thing than necessarily a MOBA. And if you notice, on every single interview, every single piece of media out there where they are talking about Paragon, the developers are always very clear that this is a MOBA. It is not a third-person action game. And being a MOBA, they have to adhere to certain rules, which is like the pacing of the whole game needs to conform to the pacing of a MOBA. So when you're in a fight, you're not supposed to just be able to run away instantly. You have to basically, entering into an engagement is a commitment. You are saying, I believe that I can win this engagement, and you attack. It's not, I'm going to get in there, take a couple of shots, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going to run away. No, they want you to stop fast moving when you go into that engagement, and they're going to lock you into that engagement until the bitter end, or until you're able to escape. But escaping is not going to be as easy as just, oh, I'm just going to hit this escape button, I'm going to get the hell out of here. And that is intended because they want the game to have stories, which is always a weird concept whenever they say that. It's kind of weird, but the fact of the matter is, and I've experienced this quite a bit during the community event, is when you're stuck in a combat situation, you can't just leave. Like, things happen that kind of shift the pace of battle. Like, maybe your friends are able to come in to reinforce you and you make a perfect bait, or instead maybe you went in and someone came in and reinforced them and you're kind of screwed and you have to deal with that situation. That kind of creates a story of what happened there. And those stories wouldn't happen if all you had to do is like, I'm just going to push fast move button, I'm going to get the hell out of here. You know, if it was too easy for you to leave engagements, the game would probably last forever. And that's also not intended. As a matter of fact, I kind of feel that right now the matches are way too long, which was another point that some people made, which is matches are too long. And I have to give it to you guys. I do feel that sometimes matches do go on for quite a while. Particularly a couple of the matches that I had at Epic headquarters, they went as long as 50 minutes. But these were like exceptions. Like, your average match length is hovering, I believe, at the 30 to 35 minute mark. But if you get some weird comebacks in between there, those matches can carry on for longer. Now, the problem here is, in my opinion, it's like, so what do you want to do? You want to have faster matches? But how does that work? Do you just like increase the snowball effect? And then as players go through, and it's like if they get to a certain point, there's just no comebacks and they just steamroll you at the 20-minute mark? Is that what you want? Or do you want to have the possibility for a comeback, but that also risks that you might have a longer match? And again, this also links with the movement / pacing of the game. Like, this is one of those things that is just interconnected to the nth degree, right? And, you know, the movement or the pacing of the game is going to determine how long a match is. However, like I said, if you increase the pacing of the game at this point, I feel it's going to be way too harsh for newer players because more experienced players who know a little bit about the travel system, they're going to surprise you so fast by beating the crap out of you and just constantly showing up out of nowhere in your lane. And you're just going to be overwhelmed because of how fast they can do it, which is why I feel the pacing right now is very close to the sweet spot. I'm not sure if it needs to be slower or faster, but it's very close to the sweet spot. But again, that does bring us to the whole thing, matches are too long. And that is with the comeback mechanics, which is if you don't want long matches, you want matches that just snowball out of control and just completely wreck your base. Right now, the comeback mechanics are there, so if your team plays well, you can delay a match long enough to come back from it. But if you don't want that that kind of chance there, then the matches will be shorter, but you don't have a comeback mechanic. So it's kind of a thin line. So I just want to bring that up as well. And while we're on that topic, several people were concerned that the game snowballs too hard. And I kind of feel that might have been a result of maybe a couple of misconceptions during the commentary from me and Hengist, because we were talking about how heroes can kind of snowball a little bit. And we were referring specifically to the fact, like, if you look at Heroes of the Storm, which is what we cover a lot on the Squadron channel, heroes very rarely snowball out of control, right? I mean, because you have a team-wide level, which is clearly not the case in Paragon. And that team-wide level ensures you that there's no one hero that completely, dominates the battlefield. There's no one hero in one team that becomes way more powerful than another hero all of a sudden. Because those snowball mechanics simply aren't there. And what happens with Paragon is there is some of that. So say, for instance, if I'm playing Twin Blast, which is currently the most powerful 80 carry, if I'm not mistaken, particularly if you want to duel 1v1s, that kind of thing. If I'm playing Twin Blast and I kill a whole bunch of people early on in the game, I will be able to buy more cards than other people in that match, and my character will snowball. And he might even snowball out of control. I've seen Twin Blast snowball a little bit out of control quite a few times, which is going to force your team into either becoming more defensive and actually investing in some gear that increases your defenses, or just like play super defensively until you can start matching up with your own cards. But the way that we are. The way that the card system works is that there's a limit to the amount of cards and upgrades that you can purchase per match. That limit is 60 points. Once you reach that limit, that character can effectively not buy any more cards. So every character reaches a certain cap during a match. So it's not like you can just keep on purchasing more and more items. And that cap is not too hard to reach. So what happens is, even if a character snowballs out of control a little bit earlier on in a match, if your team plays smart, you can play defensively long enough until every other character on your team can kind of build against that character and can reach that 60-point limit as well, which will make them just as powerful, or at least powerful enough to deal with that problem. So if you actually compare, Paragon to Heroes of the Storm, it definitely snowballs more than in Heroes of the Storm. But if you compare it to every other MOBA, like League of Legends, Heroes of New Earth, Dota 2, I'm sorry, but every single one of those games snowballs 10 times as hard as Paragon. Not even kidding you right now. I'm sorry, but like in League of Legends, at least you can reach a point where your what hero was it at the time? I don't even know the hero names anymore because I haven't played that game in forever. But like your Misfortune, for instance, could just like kill people so fast they couldn't even register how fast they died. And that does not necessarily happen as much in Paragon. That together with the point system, which allows everybody to kind of like get back into the game, there's definitely a lot of potential for comebacks in Paragon, is what I want to bring out here. Because that was definitely a misconception that I've seen a lot of people saying that the game snowballed too hard. It doesn't. In my personal opinion, it doesn't. However, it's like every other MOBA, right? I mean, if you have a bad team, you're going to lose. And that's pretty much every MOBA. Whenever you get a match made with poor teammates, you're going to lose. And there's not a whole lot that you can really do about that. You can try to communicate with them. You can try to change the situation to the best of your ability. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be a much better experience if you're playing with friends and you can actually communicate like through TeamSpeak or whatever and tell them like, hey, let's try to do this. Let's do this thing. Let's have you go here. Let's have you do this. That's always going to be a better experience. So at the end of the day, your team is going to determine whether you win or lose. So, I mean, I'm not sure what some players are expecting sometimes. Let me see. Let me just see if I missed anything there. Nope, we're good. So let's talk about the next thing. People saying that this game is pay to win. Now, I believe that the reason why people are saying that Paragon is pay to win is because of the fact that we've mentioned a card system. So people most likely have assumed that they can just buy cards, kind of like Hearthstone, and just become more powerful that way. And what I can tell you is, number one, I know a lot more about the business model than people who are just on the online test, because it was revealed to us what the intended business model was. But unfortunately, I can't talk about it, which I really wish I could, because I really don't see a problem with talking about what they've told me. As a matter of fact, I think it would be really positive if we could reveal what the business model is. But again, I can't talk about it. However, what I can tell you with absolute certainty, and it has been said publicly by people from Paragon, from Epic Games, is that you cannot buy cards with real money. So for all those of you who thought, oh, I'm just going to buy booster packs with money, or people are just going to buy booster packs with money, and it's going to be a problem because, you know, you're going to be able to buy power with money. That's not a thing. You cannot buy cards with real money, and cards are the only thing that actually increase the power of a character. And you can't buy those with real money. That is not going to be a thing. So therefore, this specific sentence should instantly tell you the game is not pay to win. If the only thing that can give power to a character are cards, and you cannot buy those cards with real money, then it's simply not pay to win. Am I right? I mean, that's kind of the way I feel about it. If you guys have anything else that you want to say about Paragon that it's pay to win, I can maybe address that, but cards you cannot buy with real money. However, it does work kind of like an RPG. So say if I play for 10 or 20 hours or whatever, and I acquire cards through playing, which is the only way of acquiring cards is actually playing the game, and I have more cards than you, then effectively my heroes are going to be more powerful than yours. Just like any RPG. Like if we take a close look at a recent example, look at The Division. People who played the Division beta for 20 hours or so and acquired enough Dark Zone currency to buy the best weapons, they were way more powerful than anyone else. It's the same thing. That RPG mechanic is in there. Now, the thing is, this gets solved by the matchmaking system, which is obviously the matchmaking system is going to look at win-loss ratios, how many cards a person has, that kind of stuff, and is going to matchmake you as closely as possible to someone of equal skill / equal amount of cards, etc., to kind of try and create the most perfect match possible. However, we all know that matchmaking is usually never perfect, so it all depends on how good their matchmaking is to avoid, say, a match where you put a new player, like a fresh player, against another player that already has 30 or 50 hours in and has like full decks that he acquired through playing the game. But remember, you cannot buy power. You cannot buy card packs. You have to play the game to actually get cards. So the whole pay to win thing, out the window, and trust me, this game's not going to be pay to win. And finally, the last thing is that cards are basically like the item shop, and the item shop kind of sucks. Now, I have to agree with the statement that the item shops in most MOBA games suck. And I have to also agree that cards were a big turnoff when I first played Paragon, because I was like, oh man, having to deal with these cards, having to learn all these things. But the interesting thing was that, I don't know, 3 matches in or so, I already understood how the cards work. Whereas if you just play randomly 3 matches of Smite, I highly doubt that you're going to understand the inner workings of that goddamn store. Same thing for League of Legends. Definitely same thing times 10 for Dota 2. So the reason why I feel this is the fact that it doesn't have a complex item structure. So it's not like I'm buying this tiny knife and then I'm buying this other tiny knife and then I'm buying glue and then I'm gluing these two tiny knives together into the big sword. You know, you don't have to memorize those crazy ass hierarchies that lead to the special item that deals armor penetration or the thing that leads to the special item that deals critical damage. No, it's just like you have a card, right? And each card is usually pretty simple. It's like this card has 7 points. Usually it's 7.6%. Not 7.6%. It's just 7.6 energy damage and plus 100 health. And then the upgrades that go in this card will either be upgrades for health or upgrades for damage. And that's it for that specific card. Then you have another card. It's like crit chance and damage. And the upgrades that go in that card will be for either crit chance or damage. So you choose the upgrades that you want and the cards that you want. And basically when you get the card, you already have the big item. So let's say in League of Legends, you would be saving up to buy the big sword or whatever, and you have to buy the 2 small knives and all this other bullshit. In Paragon, basically, you just get the big sword, and then it's like putting sockets on it. Like in Diablo 3, you just put a gem in there and it does something, except instead of a gem, it's what we call an upgrade in Paragon. So it's just like you get an item, you get 3 slots for that item, that's it. Each item 3 slots. Once you get the 3 slots filled in, usually the item will give you an additional bonus. So usually what you want to do is you want to get, depending on your situation in game, you get whichever item is going to benefit you the most. You put the 3 upgrades on there and then you move on to the next item. That's kind of the way that I've been doing it. But the fact of the matter is it feels a lot more simple than having to memorize the 10 different knives or whatever, or the 100 different shields that you have to do in order to get the special gem of healing, whatever, you know? It's just a card, and it says there, this is what this card does. And if you put upgrades on it, it does more of what it says on the card. That's it. It is a lot easier and a lot more intuitive, again, in my opinion, than the item shops. The other thing about the card system is that you make your own deck before going into a match. And what this means is, you know, as you are building your deck, you're familiarizing yourself with each one of the cards in that deck. So at the end of the day, you should be pretty familiar with what you have for each of the characters that you built a deck for. And therefore, that just means that you're not going at the shop and looking at, say, for instance, you're playing a hero that deals an energy damage. You're not going into the shop and looking at items that deal physical damage. You don't have to sort through all that crap in the store. You just have the items that you picked out for that specific character, and you will most likely, after your 3rd match, you'll already know, okay, right now I want the tune barrier, or I want the physical barrier because I'm taking too much physical damage or too much energy damage, or I want the, what's the name of the, I don't remember the name of a lot of the energy cards. A lot of the time I play the tank character, but like I know that the Agoran scepter is like the crit scepter, so it's like, oh, I want the stuff that gives me crit for energy. It's the Agoran scepter. Boom, you get that, and you will know. And in my opinion, again, it's much better than item shops. But again, a lot of this stuff is my opinion. A lot of it is the experience that I've had so far with Paragon. But I just wanted to put this video out there, and hopefully it will clear up a lot of the misconceptions that I've seen in the different comment sections for this game, and hopefully it informs you guys a lot more about stuff from Paragon, if you guys were curious about it. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it's been useful, and if you have any specific questions about Paragon, leave them in the comment section. I will try to check this as often as possible to answer all the questions that you might have. Thank you very much for watching. Comments, feedback, all the kinds of good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.